Hello and welcome to Spotlight on North Hunterdon. I'm Kyle Canello.
And I'm Amy Schroeder.
And today we are very pleased to have a special guest with us, Dr. Emily Bartles, the professor of English at Rutgers University and director of English at Middlebury College, joins us to talk about academic integrity.
All right. Thanks for being here with us, first of all. We're going to start talking about the juniors at our school. So the college application for the juniors, especially the college essay, can create anxiety and pressure to present oneself in a bright image. So how often do colleges recognize plagiarism in a college essay?
I think it's really tough because it's outside the context of a discipline and it's personal writing. So I don't think it's something that people are actually expecting to come, because part of what you're putting forward is you.
Yeah. All right, Kyle, you got the next one.
In your experience as director of Middlebury College, the School of English, what do you look for in a successful applicant?
And this will apply also to what we look for when we're looking at graduate students at Rutgers as well. And it will also apply to college students. What you're looking for is an individuated voice. So the form is really when you're presenting yourself, both in a personal essay and in any writing sample you give, in any kind of writing you're doing, what we're looking for is somebody who sort of has an originality, has a way in. And it's tough because you're given these forms and there's a prescript and you do not spend your life writing personal statements, and it's a sort of weird mode to get yourself in. The best thing you can do is try to think about who you are, what you care about, and what you sound like. I think what happens is students tend to write in this voice that is sort of the applying for college or applying for graduate school voice. That isn't anybody's voice. So the more you sort of incorporate a kind of authenticity, the more you are you, the more we want you, the more we get you. Because if you think about what's going to happen to you, the further along you go, every stage you're going to become more and more and more the expert. So we're looking for people whose minds are going to kind of take the ball and go with it, right?
So as you said, it can be a challenge for students who are not used to writing in that voice. So do you see any mistakes that kind of hinder their application? Is there any specific examples?
It depends. You know, I see more of this at the graduate level, where folk want to say, you know, I really love your program and I want to work with this person and, you know, blah, blah, blah. We know about our programs, right? And we know you learn about us on the internet. So that stuff, you know, wouldn't throw you out of the program, but that's not so interesting. I do think I am an English professor, so I do think one thing that's going to knock you out of the running when I'm looking at applications at various levels, I don't want to sound all creaky and cranky, but accuracy in grammar. Not a single typo. You know, you can do things like use sentence fragments and use creative prose, but if you've got a subject-verb problem, if you're talking about you're misusing a word or you're overusing adjectives and sort of problems of kind of padding the language, that to me begins to register somebody who's not as articulate, not as in control of language, and of course writing is thinking. So I would say, you know, your best friend is to have 3 or 4 people reading everything you submit, because I can write an essay 8 times and get ready to send it off, and I've gone over it and over it and over it. I've drafted and redrafted, and there will still be a typo, right? So accuracy is everything in terms of that sort of make it or break it. But get your voice out there. Yeah,
definitely.
And do you believe that perspective also applies to juniors applying to college and different activities like that as well?
Yeah, I mean, I once said to a student in a Shakespeare class of mine years ago. I said to the class, look, I'm teaching you how to read and write and speak. And whatever you learn about Shakespeare, it's going to be your ability to write a letter and to articulate clearly and directly in an interview that's going to get you a job. And the student wrote me 25 years later, not to give my age away, and said, Professor Bartles, I learned some stuff about Shakespeare, but the one thing that came through as absolutely true was that. So everything you're doing now is a sort of preparation to be able to present yourself and to kind of follow a professional track. So it's practice, practice, practice.
So what can students do to prepare authentic applications? Like, I know you said before, like, write in your own voice, but do you have any specific tips?
Think about who you are. Think about where your interests lead you in this class or that class, and think about yourself as one of the greatest resources that education and professional life have. Try not. You'll always feel you've been in a system where you're graded. You've been in a system where you've been evaluated constantly, and it's hard to sort of forget about the eyes watching on the other side and to sort of center on yourself and think about, gee, I'm kind of special. I got all this stuff to bring to the table. What do I want someone to see? I hate to use the word marketing, but in a way, what you're doing is you produce yourself on applications, again, at every level.
You brand yourself.
You brand yourself, and to me, it's about believing in yourself, and sort of thinking about, I've had to do this, in applying for different kinds of jobs throughout my career. What is it that I'm great at? How can I let you know without simply saying I'm great at this, that I'm great at this? You do it in some ways by showing both a sort of knowledge of your area or field or set of interests, but also your engagement. You can always tell when an applicant is actually thrilled about what he or she or they write. Right? I can say, I think I said in a graduate application, I love literature. I tell people kind of not to say that, but that's what you want to get across, right? That you're going to give heart and soul to doing this. You're totally committed. It's a little off the track, but what I've noticed in graduate school with students who are going for a PhD, the ones given a field of talented candidates who are all capable of doing the thing and getting to the end of the degree, the ones that thrive are the ones that are so committed, they eat the work for breakfast cereal. So that's it. I mean, it's really about, so what you do is you sit down, it's like, oh gosh, I got to write this essay. I'm going to have to show it to my teacher and the guidance counselor, blah, blah, blah. Get yourself out of the process. Go sit on a rock and think, what is it that really gets you going? And pull that out of yourself and imagine that you're going to be the person or the persons who are going to change the world. Right?
Wow.
Really, I believe that. And I think students don't know that yet. Believe that and sell it. And then we let you in. And then you fly. That's not on a dotted line contract. I can't,
All right, so we talked about a lot of different ways a student can be unique in a college application. So if nothing else, what do you think is the one thing that juniors should keep in mind when doing their application?
The one thing.
I know.
Yeah. Again, for me, I think the big thing is voice. So everything you can do in doing the application to make sure it sounds like you, that's the best guide I can give you.
Yeah. All right.
So in general, there's strategies that can be taught in high school that can help get students ready for college, and we're kind of shifting to the more academic integrity side of this in saying that what strategies should a student develop in high school that will prevent them or give them an inclination to cheat in college?
Yeah. You just don't want to do that. For me, the thing is what you're doing. If you think about what you're doing, again, within a system that has to have evaluation and has to have grades and has to have tests and has to have papers, and if you think about what you're doing more as a learning experience than a series of, and I'm sure you do, but if you sort of re-theorize how you come at academic integrity and think about, okay, I'm learning, and this is for me. It's not for my teachers. It's, I do have to, get in other schools and get a career or a job, blah, blah, blah. So I understand the practical things of that are all around us. But what you're doing, it's all for you. Everything is for you. So, and I'm sure people have said before me, that cheating and plagiarism, you're cheating on yourself in some ways.
This is true.
If you think about what you're really trying to do, you're trying to take all the stuff you're learning in class and you're trying to become experts, right? You're trying to become that resource that will change everything, right? Mm-hmm. So the more you take seriously, what you're doing as you write papers, as you take exams, as an occasion for you to sort of test yourself out, to sort of press yourself to the limits. We all, we understand the kind of pressure cooker environment that happens around education. But the more you can think, the more you can sort of cordon that off and think, well, this is for me, and every time I put anything on a piece of paper, this is my work. It may be that I'm, doing a math problem and there is an answer, and it seems to you like somebody else's answer. But in fact, the process by which you get to writing down 4, if the answer is 4, is yours. So the more you take ownership of what you're doing as you do something, which we then evaluate, your teachers then evaluate, I think the less you have an inclination to shortcut it, right?
I think with that you're saying is a strategy that could be really helpful, and I know for me, and I'm sure Amy as well, is time management is huge, because if I'm given a deadline and I push it off, and then I'm put under that pressure, a student is more likely, statistics show, to cheat. So if I can manage my time better and start in high school, when I get to college, I think I'll be ready to go.
That's a really great idea.
Yeah. Right.
Because what you're doing, which is really smart, is thinking about what's amplifying that pressure. And you're saying, look, it's that time, and it's like, oh my gosh, I can't do this. Yeah, I think that's very smart.
All right, cool, thank you.
All right, so what do you think is most important for seniors to understand about the consequences of not following academic integrity policies in college? Because I'm sure it's very different in college compared to high school.
It's different in a way. I mean, I've looked at the academic integrity policy here, and in fact, Rutgers' academic integrity policy is very close to it, so the underlying ideas are about the same. The thing that will happen at a university, it will be different probably at a smaller college, is that you're more independent as students. You're not watched as much as students. It doesn't mean people don't care about academic integrity or police it, regulate it, watch it, but there are institutions that will put you a little bit more on your own. So at Princeton, for example, every paper that you hand in, you write at the bottom of it, this is my own work. And so they put the responsibility back on you. So in a way, I don't want to say it's easier to get away with it, because that would be counterproductive. But in a way, more of the responsibility goes towards you. We do check, and with the internet, things like turnitin.com make it very easy and quick and effective for faculty to look at papers and see if anything is lifted. The problem, there are all the glories of the internet, but the problem with the internet is there is text there's material out there at your fingertips to borrow, so you might not run to a library and copy out of a book to put that in a paper, though that used to happen when people went to libraries. But there it is, you're under pressure, you don't have much time, everything's late, and there it is. So you're just going to lift that, and that person sounds more authoritative to you. That person has to be smarter than you because the work is published. Lesson 1 is, oh no.
Right.
So in a college environment, it might be that, or university environment, it might be that you are not monitored as closely as you might be in a classroom, even though the institution, universities and colleges, take it deadly seriously. I think the consequence is, all that said, the consequence is much more significant because you guys, you're in high school, you're learning, you might make a mistake, right? And there's a little bit more area, forgiveness. If you do it in college, you're now adults. You're already adults, but you're more adult.
You're expected. You're expected to. You know the rules now. You're expected to, and especially when you put your name at the bottom of the paper, you say, "This is my own work." A student could now feel guilt in saying that I still went beyond that barrier, and not to mention that Hunterdon.com could actually be used by students as well to check their own work and say, "Wait a minute, I put way too much. I grabbed way too much from this source." And change it up as well. So then it falls on the student, like you said, and they know the rules at that point.
That's right. And if you think so, from college, every level, college matters more to what you're going to become and where you're going than high school. Graduate school matters more than college. Once you're, getting up in those levels that are going to route you into a career or what you're going to do with your life, you don't want something like, you don't want to have done it, but you don't want this on your record because then it will show up. It will begin to show up, right, in a way that, could have, it could keep you out of a position. It could keep you out of a school,
Wow.
And what do you think that we should do as seniors to prepare ourselves to get ready to be in that situation where we have to be there for ourselves and get it in for the academic integrity in college?
Couple of things. I mean, one thing is to realize that the minute you hit college, your education is your own. You choose the classes you want to take. We all have requirements, but you've got a lot more independence. So the time management thing that you bring up, you think about, what kinds of courses can I manage? How do I block my time? How do I use my time? Because you're not in class. You're studying more than you're in class, and that's a big adjustment. And you've got to be the one that says, okay, I'm going to study all day on Saturday because the break for lunch, because I got some stuff I need to, and I think that's really hard because suddenly you're not in class as much as you're not in class 5 days a week. Your class time is scattered. The other thing to think about, particularly as you're seniors and you're beginning to go into college work, where particularly in the humanities, more and more of your work will involve using sources, doing research, incorporating that into what you write and what you present. And those are the moments where, it's almost tempting. It's almost too easy to sort of take somebody's stuff and maybe in your notes you didn't quite remember to write it down where the source came from, and then it eases into your paper and you didn't exactly mean it to. I mean, there are slippages like that that are not dishonest, but they are deeply problematic. If you imagine that as you're about to enter an environment where the intersection of your voice with those sources, your thinking with other people, that's going to be more and more of what you do. And if you think of it less about, I've got to make a footnote, and more about, okay, I've got to learn something from other people who've been thinking about this, and I might need to change what they're thinking. I might be smarter than they are. So you're not just taking them in as the truth, right, as fact.
Yeah.
You're the people who will bring new vision to it. So it takes a long time. I still see students in graduate school learning how to do it. But if you begin to think about, well, okay, I got to shift gears a little bit. And instead of thinking of myself as the student to all this work and teachers and so on, I'm actually going to inch up here. Because ultimately I want to be here. Oh, I'll be gone. That's okay. So, you know, you're trying to inch up to sort of become the authority yourself. And the reason you look in books and pull, or the internet or wherever, and you pull material from other people is because you need both a ground for your thinking, but you're also trying to think about, well, where are the limits of this? How can I get beyond it? So if you start to think of that as sort of the intellectual adventure rather than this mechanical thing you'll have to do, and you'll see it. People will say, you know, you're going to write a paper and you've got to use 3 sources, and it just sounds very mechanical. And I think sometimes we err in presenting it that way. But if you think about it as, this is my opportunity to engage in a conversation, and the person, you know, may come from 1950. The person may be, you know, long gone and quit. But that's what you're doing. You're trying to figure out, well, what do I have to say? What is my contribution, and how is it going to go along with, amplify, supplement, correct what we already know? It becomes less about, you know, and I'm sure you're already doing some of this, but it's less about absorbing knowledge, right? And more about creating it. Creating, you know, the questions. Look at you leading the questions here, right? you know a lot about how to do this. So for seniors, that's what I would say. You know, begin to think of yourself as the people who are going to start defining the fields you're entering. It's a tough transition, I think, in the first year to college. By the second year, folk have got it, right? Be ready to feel sort of at sea. Use your peers, use your resources. But the more you begin to think, oh yeah, you know, this is sort of my trajectory into being that authority,
so
the easier.
The easier, yeah. So have you ever caught someone cheating, like in your class, and what consequences did you give them? And do you see correlation between the kids who do cheat, let's just say in your class or any class, and when they go to the workforce? Do you see any correlation? How does the transition, how does that go?
Yeah, so alas, for the most part, the students that I have encountered who have plagiarized, or which is mostly what I see, rather than cheating on exams, for example, I don't know the question of where it ends up in the workforce. I've learned something though. I've learned that in a way some of the responsibility falls on me, and in any college or university. So there are institutional things that go on that are surrounding what we know are the big avenues where you find lack of academic integrity. But what I also think, and what has happened to me over the years as a teacher, I've been at this 30 years, is I've realized that if I create assignments where I'm really demanding that my students produce themselves, instead of telling me, you know, in what year was a Shakespeare play published, I ask them to I give them a sort of out-of-the-box questions that ask them to think on their feet, that involves a sort of creative thinking as well as, you know, it involves information. You have to know what you're talking about.
Rather than just facts, like their own element into it, like,
yeah.
Then you see more cheating or plagiarism in a situation like that?
Less in more in the facts.
More,
yeah, and less in the. How can you, if I say, okay, right, imagine you're performing Richard III, how would you set it?
That's not. It's not. It doesn't make. It's hard to plagiarize someone's opinion.
That's right. That's right. And so what I've tried to do is figure out how to use assignments to actually engage students creatively. So also, not only is it hard to do, why would you want to? You know, if I asked you to think about how you would stage the opening soliloquy in Richard III, that's fabulous. You know, I would like to do, right? Why would you then, I don't know how you could borrow on that, but why would you want to? So it seems to me, you know, the more we emphasize that the work we want to see is yours, the better off we are. And I realize that's harder in sciences and maths and so on, but if you think about everything you're doing as, in a way, problem solving, right? How could I design assignments that, you know, allow you to use your math skills or science skills to solve a problem in a unique way that is simply yours? So I'll tell you that in the period, when I was an early teacher at Rutgers, and I teach big Shakespeare classes, and there are 100 students, and I use exams and blah, 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 that's when I found some instances, and it's not rampant, but I would find some, I'm sure I've missed some, in papers. But as I've gotten more seasoned and more invested in making sure this is the student space, I haven't found instances for years.
Wow.
You know.
So that seems to be a lot of the time that we have for today. We want to thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for bringing me here. You've gotten me thinking about academic integrity. I love hearing how you come at it, and I love that it is an issue for you. So thank you. I enjoyed this.
And thank you for all who helped with this project. I'm Kyle Canello.
I'm Amy Schroeder.
And we're signing off. Thank you very much.
Thank you.